Can you feel it coming? Something's waking up inside. Hearts ablaze, we're standing tall, breaking chains of yesterday. Till America finds its voice. In the darkness we make choice. Truth and healing lead the way. Hearts ablaze, we're here to stay. Rise from ashes, come what may. We're finding hope in disarray.
Today we're speaking with Jacquie Elliot. She's a certified life coach, an author, and she came up with the system Abusive Brain Chatter, ABCs, which is kind of unique. So, Jacquie, could you please introduce yourself and let people know just a little more about you, please?
Well, yes. Hi, Ed. Yes, I am a certified life, but I'm also a relationship and spiritual coach. So I do all three of those coachings, and I kind of use them in my coaching. And I, have been spending the last 3.5, 4 years writing this book. It's a silent bully journey from abusive brain chatter to self-love, and that's what it's due out in November. So yeah, I have been a coach for about 4 or 5 years. Otherwise, I used to mentor people, and I used to be a business owner, and I raised money for charities, about $15 million for charities. So I have a background in business, but I decided that this is the path that I wanted to go on, helping people. And my own journey kind of framed that, my own journey with abusive brain chatter. So that's kind of why I wrote this book. I felt like at this time in my life, it's really, really important to give back.
Yeah, I'm with you all the way with that. I suffer from that still to this day. However, I've overcome the challenges of understanding what I'm dealing with when I'm going through those bouts of depressive disorders and all of these, and it helps me put a lid on those scenarios a lot quicker. Could you walk us through what abusive brain chatter is in your definition?
Okay, so abusive, we all have chatter in our head, and we all have negative chatter from time to time. That's normal, and it's never going to stop. But abusive brain chatter, I call, is that voice on steroids. And it becomes abusive when it holds you back. And the interesting thing about abusive brain chatter is that it comes from our core beliefs, and that it thinks it's helping us. It's chattering at us in some bizarre way to protect us. And that's the most interesting part that I found is, when I started doing my book and when I started working with clients, I started to actually listen to the abusive brain chatter. It's a process that I do during my coaching, which is to, when a client will say, well, I can't do that. I'll say, okay, well, let's talk to that part of you that can't do that. And we actually do some dialoguing. And usually what we find out is that abusive brain chatter is there to hold you back because it doesn't want you to fail, because it has these core beliefs that you were raised with. Maybe your mother thought you were going to fail, or your father thought you were a failure. So it doesn't want you to experience that. So instead, it chatters in your brain. You're never going to be good enough. You're never going to do that. And it holds you back. And that's the difference between just brain chatter and abusive brain chatter. And the interesting correlation, and I think what's a little more, all of people in the help industry and mental health industry, talk about this, that voice in our head, that inner critic. It's called many names, monkey mind, all these kinds of things. But what's interesting, what I tumbled on is that abusive brain chatter is just that, it's abusive. And so people tend to normalize it. And they tend to think, oh, it's just, oh God, it's just, I'm not good enough. That's just the voice in my head. But if you really break down emotional abusers belittle you, they bully you, they gaslight you, they isolate you. And those are all the things that abusive brain chatter does too. It does the very same thing. It belittles you, it bullies you, it'll isolate you by keeping you home and addicted to food, to drugs, to TV. And so once you make that connection that you're living with an emotional abuser and that emotional abuser is you, I find that people are more motivated to go, oh, wow, yeah, no, that's not a voice I want to keep in my head. That's not a voice that serves me. That's emotional abuse. And so that's part of the ABCs that I talk about in my book. Is the first step is awareness. And it's not just awareness of what the voice is saying, because that's really important, to really kind of tap into what your voice is saying. And I talk about doing it like a Jane Goodall, like an anthropologist would be like listening to, isn't that interesting? This chimpanzee does this, and that. Well, you kind of do that with your brain at first, your abusive brain chatter. You kind of go, this is interesting. Jackie's abusive brain chatter is talking about the way she looks and has a lot of negative things about the way I look. And my abusive brain chatter is telling me I can't get another job. I'm stuck in this dead-end job. And so it's really important to first be aware of what your abusive brain chatter is. And of course, the second part of that awareness is that awareness of emotional abuse. Keep a list on your computer, keep a list somewhere where you can say, wow, when you start hearing these things in your head, you can say, that's that. Oh, that's belittling. Oh, that's criticizing. Oh, I see what that is. That's gaslighting. I'm telling myself not to believe myself. And so that's the first step, is to really, really be aware. And, the second step is the believe step. And this is kind of the spiritual portion. When you said I was a certified life coach, I eventually became a spiritual coach and a relationship coach because I felt like the clients I was seeing had such abusive brain chatter and they had no ability to change that chatter. That's all they knew. And so what I find about abusive brain chatter is that you have to have a higher voice. You're not going to change your mind with your mind. Your abusive brain chatter has been with you for many years. Mine was with me for 42 years. It still crops up. It cropped up a lot as I was writing this book. The imposter syndrome, how can you do this? And all of those things. So it's just, it's like I said, it's always going to be there. But the most important thing is that I have done the work to find my inner loving voice. And some people are okay with calling it God. Some people call it a higher power. Some people call it intuition. Some people call it Mother Nature. Some people call it, the spirit. Whatever it is, it's the voice that speaks more gentle and kindly to you. And that's the second step is, you have to do some work to actually find that. And I take my clients often on a journey to find that voice. A lot of people, are so anti-religious that when I say I'm a spiritual coach, they say, "Oh, no, I don't want to believe in God. I don't, that was my childhood and I was born Christian, Catholic, Jewish, or whatever it is. And no, I don't want to I don't want to go there. And so what I often do is I often take them on a gentle journey. And that gentle journey is to find that voice. And once we find that voice, they can name it whatever they want, and they can access it whenever they want to, so that when they start belittling in themselves, and the third step that we go to is challenging that, they actually have the ability to kind of go, let me just tap into myself. Let me tap into my kinder self and know that, no, that's not a kind thing that I want to say to myself. I don't talk to myself that way anymore. I call it my soul. I protect my soul. And, so when I'm saying things that are mean to myself, like, oh God, you look terrible, or especially in aging, oh my God, look at all your wrinkles and you're looking terrible. And I say to myself, I don't want to hurt that soul. That's not something I no longer want to do. That was something I did as my younger self, but as my older self, there's no way I want to crush that soul. I want to protect that soul. And so I do that through my beliefs and that being able to quiet that voice. And then the third part, of course, a very important part, is really challenging that core belief. So that's the ABC, challenge. And so first you have to understand where your core beliefs come from. So in my own life, I had a core belief that I was that I was not pretty, and that I was never going to be pretty enough to find a partner, and that finding a man was the most important thing in life. This is a core belief that I got from my mother, and maybe possibly from my father, the idea that, back then women get married. And so my mother was constantly trying to fix me and change me. And that was a criticism, even though she'd never meant it as a criticism. My mother loved me dearly. But anytime she would try to change me, the message I got was, I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm never going to find, no one's ever going to love me enough. And so that was a core belief that I carried with me. And as a result of that core belief, I chose a partner based on the fact that he just wanted me. He was just attracted to me. I didn't really have any criteria for him being the kind of person that I wanted. It was more important that I was the kind of person that he wanted. And so no surprise, I found a narcissist and, somebody who was emotionally abusive because I was drawn to the fact that he immediately was attracted to me, and that started to feed my ego. But as I got further into the relationship, I realized that, he was just feeding my core belief that I'm not good enough, and that he's the only one who's going to love me, and that, for whatever reason, and being gaslighted. I was gaslit a lot in my marriage. And so I, of course, went into my addiction, which was food, binge eating. And that's how I coped, which then, of course, fed the fear and the shame and kept me isolated. So all of those core beliefs, those core beliefs that I had from childhood really guided my life up until I was about 42 years old. And that's when I said, enough. That's when I said to myself, do I want to live the next 42 years like I've lived the past 42 years? The past 42 years of beating myself up, hating myself, leaving that emotionally abusive relationship and taking my emotional abuser with me. I didn't recognize that. I thought I left the relationship, and so, good for me. But the reality is, for the next 5 or 10 years, I continued to carry those beliefs and to say, you're never going to find anyone. No one's ever going to love you. And you're not pretty enough. And, and all of those things I took with me. And so that day, and I know it was a day in June when I was laying on my bed. I talk about this in my book, a lot, how, what that aha moment is, how I got there. I was laying on my bed and I said, I can't breathe. I was off of work for the day, and I had my asthma inhaler. I had severe asthma. I just couldn't breathe. And I had my remote control because I was a binge watcher. I would just watch whatever I could watch. I would watch, Maury Povich, whatever it was. The TV had to be on because the TV could drown out that chatter, right? And then I had a big box of cereal in my lap, and I was eating the cereal just, until it was finished, an entire box. I mean, literally, I would open a box and then I would crunch on it. And crunching would like drown out the noise. It was a box of mini frosted wheats, with the frosting on one side and the shredded wheat on the other side. So I crunch and they're wonderful for binge eaters because again, you get that crunch and it drowns out all of the thing in your head. But we all know what happens when you're finished binge eating. I mean, there comes your abusive brain chatter going, oh God, you're so full, you're so fat, you're never going to get thin, never getting off this couch. And so that happened that day. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And that's when I really had my aha spiritual awakening. I knew that I couldn't stop it. That, I'd been to therapy for 15 or 20 years, and not that therapy is bad. It helped for what it did, but it didn't stop my abusive brain chatter. No amount of therapy was going to stop that. So I had to find a spiritual answer for me. And I did. That day I got some help. I joined a spiritual group. I called a therapist at and I literally just got down on my knees and I said, I'm surrendering. You got to show me the way. You got to help me now. Whoever you are or wherever you are, you have to shout at me. You have to tap me on the shoulder, and you have to take me the rest of this journey because I can't go there alone. And that was really the turning point in my life. I mean, it took many years to untangle all of that. But the key was, I think the initial key was understanding that I had a loving voice in me somewhere. And the key then became challenging it. And, the first thing I had to do was make an amends to myself for always beating up on myself, for doing things that were destructive. I did a lot of destructive behavior in my life. And I had to quiet the shame. I had to just start letting go of things, letting go of shame. Shame doesn't fit in my life anymore. If I start behaving differently, I have nothing to shame. So I had to start eating differently so that I could quiet that shame voice. I had to start exercising. I had to start showing up for myself. And then I had to, like I said, challenge those core beliefs. And in my book, I write about the process. There were different core beliefs I had to challenge. I had to challenge a core belief that I was weak, and my asthma. Because I was always, when you watch a movie, I always say this. You watch a movie with kids. The nerd is the one who has the asthma inhaler, right? That's the one who's the nerdy one, the one that's, people laugh at, or the weak one is the one with the asthma inhaler. So I had to fight that belief that I was the nerdy one, I was the weak one. And of course, as I started eating better and I started exercising and I started just letting go of all the things that I was just holding, that I stopped breathing, my asthma improved, just surprise, And so I had to do that. And another thing I did was I did a triathlon. Well, I came in last, but I did a triathlon. Somebody who's told they can't exercise, they're not strong. Yeah. And, and I even had to be pulled out of the water by the thing, but I'd finished it. And what I learned at that moment is I can challenge any core belief. It doesn't have to be perfect. I didn't have to come in first. I can challenge it, and I can step by step, start changing those beliefs. And that's what I did. And, in terms of my relationships and dating, instead of going out dating and saying, pick me, pick me, pick me, I went out and went, let me sit for a little while and see if this man interests me. And if he does, then I'll, and we fit, then I'll go out on another date. But it was no longer, I'll be whatever you need me to be. I suddenly had a core. I was who I wanted to be. And then, of course, as a result of that, I found a partner that fit just perfectly with who I was. And so that was really, the start of it. And after that, I quit my job a few years later, and I went out in my own. I used to work 60 hours to get paid for 40 hours because I thought I wasn't a worthy employee. Well, I learned that was wrong, that I had a lot of value. And as a result, I felt confident to go out and open my own business and become the CEO of my own business with, 5 or 6 employees. And then I had the courage to go back to school. I wanted to get my degree in psychology. And so I went back to school for 3 or 4 years before realizing that at my age, it was going to just take me too long to finish that degree, and I wanted to start helping people right away. So I went back and got my certificate in coaching and then life coaching. And then I realized I need more information, more knowledge. And I went and got my certificate in relationship coaching and spiritual coaching. And as a result, I started to really hear that abusive brain chatter in others. And I said, no, this has got to stop. And I have the tools now to help people. That's the first thing I do when when a client comes to me is, we set goals, of course, as a life coach, that's what we do. We move forward. But the thing is, why aren't you reaching your goals? What are your blocks? And we start looking at those blocks, and often the blocks are abusive brain chatter, right? So we start addressing that, and I start listening to it, and then I started saying, no, I got to write a book about this, or do a TED Talk. That was my goal. I wanted to do a TED Talk, but I realized first I have to get really clear with what my message is. So I just finished this book, and it's due out in November. And so that's my journey. And, it's ongoing. It's completely, like I said, it's ongoing. If anybody out there has abusive brain chatter, you're going to hear it. You're going to hear it. But, the tips are to pause, be aware of it, categorize it and say, yeah, that's abusive. Okay. And then tap into yourself and say, no, I need to be guided out of this. I need a higher voice to help me with this, with abusive brain chatter. And is that really true? Do I really have to be beautiful to get married? Is that really true? Am I not good enough? Here I've got my degrees, I've got my this, I've got my that, I've got a good paying job, I've got is all of that really true? Am I really not enough? And if I feel like I'm not enough, what steps do I need to make me feel like I'm enough? What goals do I need to set? What's holding me back? If it's because I think, like the imposter syndrome, maybe I don't have enough degrees or I don't have enough training. Well, then what steps do I need to take to go train? Just like I realized when I was coaching that I needed more information. I needed more education. And so instead of just saying, oh, no, this life coaching isn't for me, I just don't feel like I have it, I said, okay, what more information do I need to be a really good life coach? And then I took the steps to do it.
Augment yourself with all of these tools. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the ABC method.
Yeah. I like it a lot, and very interesting. Going back to the beginning, you kind of touched on it where our framing of our past really is who we are. And if we don't recognize that, the behavior will continue. I was lucky enough to find a good woman, and she set me straight, and she was strong enough to put up with uh, uh, immature adolescent. We got together at 17, and here in a couple weeks, we've been married 40 years, together 42. So 42 years with a woman that has helped me grow. And at the same time, I've helped her grow by understanding that we need each other to grow. And the rest is just ups and downs. So a lot of life comes with, just doing it. And that fear that holds you back from just doing it, it can really devastate your life. And that chatter that you talk about that tells you I'm not good enough, I'm an imposter, all of these mandate that you be this way. You've got to toss that book aside and be a cornucopia, be who you truly want to be, not who somebody else thinks you should be. And if you truly find that gift, it is a blessing in many ways. I am a believer of Christ myself, and to many people, that's disturbing, but I find comfort in it. And I'm solid in my belief, but I can be challenged without behaving erratic because I am so solid in my belief. So it's okay to be challenged, and you should challenge what you believe. And I like that last C is challenge that. Reflection is big. All of this ABC of what you've laid out is very important for a stabilized life. And you said what, 45 you started to get it and click, or 40. It didn't hit me until 50. And that now I'm on a good roll with it, and I'm about to turn 60. So now I'm having fun in life, even though I have a lot of different misery and pain and suffering all around me in myself. But yet I understand that that's okay. And tomorrow's going to be tomorrow, no matter how I perceive the day. So if we can encourage ourselves to look for the good in all of the bad that surrounds us, you'll find it. Flowers grow in the crack of concrete. And if you're able to spot that, that's where beauty lies.
Yeah, I loved what you said, that you're a follower of Christ, and everybody has their own path, and that's really that is every. But what I say is that if your path isn't taking you to love, Jesus was a person of love. He preached love and kindness and tolerance and all of those things. And so what I say to people when I help them find their spiritual center is that if you haven't found a loving, kind God, if you have found a punishing voice inside of you, you haven't found the Spirit. You haven't found it yet, because, and that's why it's okay, whatever you believe, Buddha, Jesus, we're all on our own path, but our goal is to be our best selves, to be our authentic selves, to be our truest self. And whoever leads us to that is okay. I respect that. I think that's wonderful. I have complete respect for that. And the other thing I wanted to say was that, you mentioned that at 50 you found that. And a lot of people do come to, part in their life where they're getting older and, I haven't got time for the pain, as Carly Simon said. Because tick tock is what I always say. Tick tock, do I want to spend the next 10 years beating myself up, right? But there's still a lot of people I know and I work with who are in their 60s and 70s who are still doing it. They haven't learned that. And I find that really sad because I think to myself, wow, I'm 73. And so, I don't know how many more years I have left. Maybe I have 10, maybe I have 15. But, I had a bad health scare this year that reminded me that I could have tomorrow. And so it's even more important as we age to really know who that voice is and let it go. And it's going to keep screaming at you until you find those tools. I don't know if you ever watch, was it Family Guy? Yeah. Well, there's this little character on it named Stewie. And there's this little bit that he did where he was going, Mom, Mommy, Mommy, Mom, Mom, Mom. And he did that for about 15 or 25 seconds, just pulling at Lois's, his mother's apron strings. And I think that's hilarious because to me, that's what abusive brain chatter is. It's trying to get your attention. And if you don't turn around and face it, it's just going to keep going. Jacquie, 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 danger, danger. Oh, that's danger, danger. And, I do my Instagram posts now. I do a bit where I am actually the abusive brain chatter and myself so that I teach people how to talk to abusive brain chatter, and the abusive brain, I'll look in the mirror. Like I did one where I'm looking on Zoom and then my abusive brain chatter comes and says, oh my God, you look terrible. Put a filter on, you look awful. You should have gotten your facelift. Oh my God, and so I teach people how to talk to it. Like, well, you know what? No, I'm not going to hide my face from the world. I'm turning on my camera. People need to, it's okay for people to see me. And what you think of me is none of my business. I did one in a bathing suit where I was looking in the mirror in a bathing suit. Well, that's pretty hard at my age, right? But I realized I got to talk to that abusive brain chatter and say, no, I'm not going to not go swimming just because you say I look terrible in a bathing suit. I'm going to go to the beach. I'm going to go swimming. So I teach people how to do that in kind of a funny way.
Yep. Yeah. You mentioned that self-doubt and being okay with who you are. It's great to feel okay with yourself. My wife had to come in before I started this chat with you today because I was out doing some things and I had my hat on and I don't think too much about what I look like. I just go and you've got to take that hat off and combs my hair for me and all of that. And, it's because it doesn't matter to me. And I do understand that I should try to appear pleasant and all of that, but I want to be real with people. And the more I can do that naturally, the better person I become, because then I can treat others with that same expectation. And you don't have to look like a Sports Illustrated model to get my attention. My attention comes from who you are and what you have to offer the world. It's not about me. Yeah, and we were talking about that earlier about that self-centered life. You have to tear that down and really open up to that. There's something higher than me. And when you find that belief, boy, it opens up doorways. I love that it's in your ABCs.
Yes. And, one of the meditations I take people through is actually unzipping your earth suit. I call it your earth suit, because when you look at it like your earth suit, I came to earth with this, with these legs, my thighs, that's the way they were. I got short arms, this is how my earth suit is. And I can't take credit for it. It's like the only thing I can do, and I say, is that, yeah, you care for it. You're responsible for caring for it. So you're responsible for keeping it healthy and groomed, right? Those are the two things that you're responsible. Otherwise, what happens when you unzip your earth suit is that you feel this white light, the who you are. You free yourself from who you are on the outside. And so suddenly your light gets brighter. And I'm like you. I mean, I love to see people whose lights shine. I think aging is so beautiful because I see so many people who are aging and with such grace and acceptance. And I look into their faces and I look into all that they've been through and all that, as we age, we can give back so much more. And we want to give back so much more. So the souls are what I look for. And so you hit the nail on the head. It's not about how we look. That's just our earth suit. It's about who we are. And we can't be who we are if we're doing this to ourselves. So I say, free yourself from this body and go explore how large you can make that inner white light.
That's right. And the quicker we can do that, the quicker we can become our natural who we are. And it's okay to be that, I guarantee. And don't let pressures surround you to the point where you overcome the pressure. It's just not worth it. And setting boundaries in your life is the key to that. And understanding boundaries are for yourself, not for other people. So if it offends other people, that's okay. Because if it offends other people, they're not really considering who you are, what you are, and most importantly, what you want around you. So they're not part of it. And I want to share my muddy shoe little thing here. Life is like a muddy shoe, and we're walking down a muddy trail. The people, places, and things are the mud in our life. And, you've walked down those muddy trails, and there's different variations of mud. There's light mud, and then there's that cling on heavy mud. You want to get rid of that cling on heavy mud because it's going to make you tire. It's going to make you give up. And find the first rock and free yourself from heavy mud. And the really liquidy mud, it's going to soak up into the fibers of your shoe and be with you for life. And if we can learn to shake off the heavy, we can really get down the trail a lot further with a lot less stress in our life. And that's by setting those boundaries that we talked about.
I love that. I'm a big analogy person. I love that analogy. Yeah, I like to see that. And yes, and there's also a great expression that I say a lot to myself is, if one of us is going to be angry, it might as well be you. So I'm going to set my boundary, right? Because otherwise I'm going to hold a resentment. If I've allowed you to trample my boundary, I'm going to hold a resentment, and that's just like poison for me. So if one of us has got to be mad, let it be you.
That's right. And that's okay, because that's how we clarify who we're around in our life is so important. That clarification, the quicker we can become who we are, it's by recognizing who we're around. And that's what we become. And I'll tell you, it's not too hard once you get that formulation to become a decent, happy person. You might not be the richest person. You might not be the prettiest person. You very well might not be the popular person in the room, but you're going to be happy with yourself. And that's what's really important.
One of the things I'll share with your listeners is that it's really important to live within your values. And I think we forget that along the way. It sounds like you're a man who live within your values. And your values sounds like their love, their kindness, their teaching, tolerance, all of those things. And so what I say to people, in fact, I even have a little, I have one of these little, it's a thing I give out to my clients. It's what do you value? It's a Post-it note. And so what you do is you take the Post-it note, you peel off about 5 or 6 of them, and you write on there on each one what you value. And then you start moving them around. Do I value this over this? Do I value this over this? Do I value this over this? Until you come to, really core values. And then you ask yourself, you do the work and you ask yourself, am I living within those values? I see so many people right now in our country and in the not living within their values. And it's like you say you value this, you say you value love, but are you living within that? Are you talking within that? Are you treating people within those values? And so it's a really, really good exercise. And if you're not, then you have to go back and you have to say either these aren't my values, or write down, how can I live within my values? What do I need to change so that my values, I now know what my values are, because I've done that work to go find it, to go soul searching, to understand what my soul was meant to do on this earth, to be my authentic soul. And from time to time, I have to go back and remind myself of that very same thing, because I get all wrapped up in stuff and I can get these thoughts in my head, and I have to go back and go, wait a minute. You value kindness, you value loving, you value tolerance. Let's go back and see what you're doing that's not in alignment with who you are. And then it's easier to love yourself, right?
Yep, that's right. And it's truly a gift when you start that cycle, review and sift and become. It's beautiful. Jacquie, I could speak with you for hours. I got lost and our time's already up. Is there anything you want our listeners to understand before I let you go? And also, could you let them know how to get your book and how to reach out to you?
Yes. Well, I really, really, my heart hurts when I hear people demean themselves. It's painful. It's not pleasant to be around people who don't like themselves. So if you aren't there yet, go on that journey, go on that spiritual journey, find the tools, pick up my book. And, I have exercises in there that walk you through that. And my book is, again, called The Silent Bully, Journey from Abusive Brain Chatter to Self-Love. And I'll take you right through that. And the other thing is, if you want to reach me, I think my link tree is Jacquie Elliot, which is JACQUIELLIOTT, and that's through Linktree. And you can find all of my Instagrams. You can follow me and get tips, and write to me on my website, Healing ABC, Healing, all one word, Healing ABC. And Ed, thank you for having me. I love the message you're spreading.
It's a pleasure having somebody like you, Jacquie. It really shows that if we come together, we can accomplish something, even if it's a little something. A little bit here, a little bit there adds up. And the more people that climb on the bandwagon and say, I'm going to give back, that's the key. You said it earlier. Thank you for being here and being part of the family.
Thank you. Thanks again. Bye.
Used to run from my reflection, searching for somebody else's affection. Thought the mirror was my enemy, till I learned to set myself free. Every voice that tried to break me down was just my own fear wearing a crown. Now I'm dancing in the truth I found. Purple light surrounds, silent bully screams inside, till self-love becomes the guide. Jacquie shows the way to peace. Inner critic finds release. You are enough just as you are. You are the sun, you are the star. Colors change when you see clear. Red becomes desire, not fear. All the judgment melts away when you choose to love today. Every voice that tried to break me down was just my own fear wearing a crown. Now I'm dancing in the truth I found. Purple light surrounds, silent bully screams inside, till self-love becomes the guide. Jacquie shows the way to peace. Inner critic finds release. You are enough just as you are. You are the sun, you are the star. I'm the temple and the prayer. I'm the question, the answer there. Sacred body, holy mind. Leave the poison world behind. Would be fine. Silent bully screams inside, till self-love becomes the guide. Jacquie shows the way to peace. Inner critic finds relief.